Millions of years ago, Earth entered an era of violent upheaval. Ice ages and interglacial periods followed one another, permanently reshaping the planet. They gathered into small bands where every individual, whether elderly or a child, had a role. This cohesion was their only shield. Their brains, though larger than those of their primate ancestors, were still in early development. They consumed vast energy and demanded a continuous flow of calories. Hunger wasn't just an unpleasant sensation. It was a direct threat to the organ most vital to survival, the organ that would decide the future of the lineage. The act of making fire was not instant. It was a learned and transmitted technical process. Humans no longer merely used what was available. They deliberately created one of nature's greatest forces. The African savanna of the Paleolithic teemed with life and death. Giant herbivores roamed the plains. They offered rich supplies of fat and nutrition, but they were formidable challenges. For a creature barely taller than 1.5 meters, armed only with sharpened sticks or sharpened stone flakes, confronting a 1-ton beast head-on was extremely dangerous. Individual failure was a brutal lesson of natural selection. The physical strength of a single individual, even the strongest in the band, could not match the power of nature. Impulsive actions lacking calculation and coordination led only to injury and the waste of precious energy. This failure affirmed a core truth. Human evolution did not proceed by maximizing individual muscle, but by deepening group cohesion and developing intelligence. Instead of charging into a contest of strength, the brain began to work. It analyzed the environment and identified key elements: marshy ground, the herd's direction of travel. Possible ambush points. Signaling indicated a developed system of nonverbal communication. It required the understanding that others had thoughts, intentions, and perspectives of their own, and could coordinate action based on a shared plan. This is the foundation of all complex communal activity. A coordinated hunt was a symphony of silence and purposeful action. Each subgroup had a clear role: a noise-making unit to steer and an ambush unit to strike. They manipulated another species' behavior, exploiting the prey's weakness and the terrain's strengths. This was no longer a simple chase. This was a trap, a strategy laid by brains capable of spatial reasoning, prediction, and cooperation. Their ability to act as a single unified superorganism granted them an advantage unmatched by any other species. Bringing down a large animal yielded an immense resource. Hide, bone, sinew, horn, every part had value. Meat and fat supplied essential energy and protein for the body and brain. Butchering a large animal with crude stone tools required skill and strength. Sharp flint flakes, products of the Oldowan stone knapping technique, were used to skin, slice, and break bone. Sharing reinforced relationships, lowered internal conflict, and ensured that all individuals, even those not directly involved in the hunt, received a portion. The sharing, reciprocal altruism, was the glue of humanity, ensuring the band's survival rather than only that of its strongest members. Tool evolution often began with the shortcomings of existing tools. A broken spear tip or a chipped stone during use wasn't a failure, it was a lesson. The brain recorded which stone was harder, which shape worked better, which knapping technique produced sharper edges. A spark in that individual's mind of a better, more effective tool was the flare of creativity. Trial and error, driven by survival needs, was the engine of tool progress over millions of years. A successful hunt created a new problem: surplus. Meat was precious but perishable. In Africa's warmth, bacteria and insects quickly decomposed carcasses. Food preservation became a critical survival pressure. Great discoveries often come from keen observation of chance events. The human brain was developing a new capacity: pattern recognition and causal inference. They didn't just see two different pieces of meat, they linked that difference to a factor in the environment. This marked the shift from passive perception to analytic thinking. Eating something that looked different was a bold act, driven by curiosity and hunger's pressure. They told the brain, this is safe, this is nourishing, this is different. When others, especially the experienced elders, also tasted and accepted it, the new knowledge was validated and spread through the community. Building a smoking rack showed deeper process understanding. They didn't just repeat blindly, they improved it, keeping the fire smoldering to produce smoke, hanging meat up high for even exposure, choosing fragrant woods. This was coordinated work requiring division of labor and skill. A tool was not only an object, it was a process, a shared body of practice. Protecting the flame and the smoking process against the elements showed how crucial this new tool had become. They spent effort and faced danger to safeguard their stores. This marked an important psychological shift. They were no longer entirely at nature's mercy. They actively intervened, using intellect and tools to build a buffer, a reserve for stormy days, literally and figuratively. Smoked meat kept longer, helping them endure scarcity and hunger. Even with smoking, preservation wasn't perfect. Trial and error was integral to learning. Nature always held unexpected solutions, and the key lay once again in observation. A small accident, a piece of meat dropped, opened the door to a new discovery. In the struggle for survival, no event was meaningless to a curious brain. Instead of recoiling and discarding it, this individual showed the quality that would shape humanity's future: scientific curiosity. They observed another species' behavior and its effects on the environment. They noticed the ants didn't just eat, they secreted a liquid that changed the meat. The stench of decay gave way to a sharp, sour aroma. The surface of the meat tightened and dried. They were witnessing a complex transformation. The ants' secretions acted like a natural preservative, inhibiting putrefying bacteria. The lightly sour taste of ant-treated meat signaled not only safety, but a new flavor. For the first time, humans weren't only trying to make food last longer, they were inadvertently changing its taste, making it more complex. From chance observation, they moved to intentional experiment. They replicated the conditions of the initial discovery. This was a vital step in thinking. Forming a hypothesis, these ants keep meat from spoiling, and then testing it through trial. They began harnessing another species' powers, using ants to keep their food longer and tastier. Combining the ants' liquid with the fire's smoke revealed more sophisticated thinking. They didn't use methods in isolation, they combined them for greater effect, an early understanding that different processes can complement one another. The unique flavor born of this combination may have been the seed of seasoning in cuisine. They were no longer eating only to survive. They were beginning to enjoy food, a deeply cultural behavior. Venturing into an entirely new ecosystem, the coast posed unprecedented challenges and opportunities. For a creature accustomed to the savannah, the ocean was an alien world, both frightening and promising. The air, the crash of waves, and the vastness of water stimulated their senses and expanded their sense of the world. Environmental change powerfully drives adaptation and creativity. Methods that worked on the dry savannah faltered in the humid coast. Moist air made fire hard to keep, wind scattered smoke, and high humidity fostered mold. Survival pressure returned, forcing them to devise new, locally adapted solutions. Adaptation was not only biological, it was technological and behavioral. Nature again offered an answer through a chance find. Salt crystals left by evaporating seawater were a valuable new resource. Their concentrated salinity spoke strongly to the brain, Salt was not just seasonal, it was essential for bodily function, especially the nervous system. For carnivorous creatures, finding supplemental salt was crucial. Building on prior experience with smoke and ants, they quickly experimented with this new substance. Osmosis was set in motion when salt was rubbed into meat. Salt drew water out of the meat and out of bacteria, desiccating them and halting their growth. The meat tightened, dried, and was protected from decay. Humanity had stumbled upon one of history's most effective and important preservatives. To use salt more effectively required brine, which raised a new tooling problem. How to hold and heat liquids. Hides leaked, bark split. Observing sun-hardened clay and its transformation in fire involved a chain of subtle causal insights. Common clay, when fired at high temperature, underwent an irreversible change, becoming hard, durable, and impermeable. Pottery. Creating the first ceramic bowl was a technological revolution. It required a complex, deliberate sequence, choosing the right clay, kneading, shaping, drying, and finally firing in a controlled heat. With ceramic pots, their culinary capacity leapt forward. They could boil water, an efficient way to cook and kill pathogens. Pots opened the world of soups and stews, diversifying and securing their diet more than ever before. Deeper inland, they faced another harsh environment, hot semi-deserts. Water and shade were scarce. The animals here were adapted, faster and more wary. Old hunting tactics failed. Once again, environmental change demanded new thinking and strategies. The successful hunt this time displayed an even higher level of strategic thinking. exploited a sheer cliff. The plan was more complex, requiring tighter coordination and a deep grasp of herd psychology, how to create panic and steer the stampede. They were turning the landscape itself into a weapon. With little wood for smoking, they sought another energy source. The answer was the land's great ruler, the sun. The blazing sun, stored in rocks, created a vast natural oven.
Heave!
Observing a bird desiccated under the sun triggered an insightful connection. They realized heat and dry air could quickly remove moisture from meat, an effective way to stop bacterial growth. Sun drying combined accumulated knowledge. Cutting meat into thin strips sped dehydration. They were applying principles to craft a durable, lightweight, nutrient-dense product, dried meat. Jerky-like dried meat was ideal for a nomadic life. It was light, portable, and kept for long periods without fire or complex conditions. In this way, they packaged each piece of meat. Winter was the ultimate, most severe test for any creature. Trees stood bare, animals migrated or hibernated. For hunter-gatherers, it was a season of hunger and death. Without food reserves, survival depended entirely on daily luck, a perilous gamble. Winter was the supreme selective pressure, favoring groups able to plan and prepare for the future. This was the moment when all prior discoveries and efforts paid off. Smoked meat, salted meat, sun-dried meat, stores accumulated during times of plenty, now kept the tribe alive. They were no longer passive before winter's harshness. Successful overwintering broke the seasonal hunger cycle, bringing unprecedented stability and safety. Long winter nights became times to gather, strengthen bonds, craft tools, and, most importantly, tell stories and share experience. In these quiet, warm moments, culture began to take shape. Surviving winter on stored food proved the power of intellect and tools. It gave them confidence in choice. For the first time, they could remain where water and fertile land were plentiful, rather than constantly moving in search of food. Planting a few seeds, even as an experiment, signaled a revolutionary shift in mindset, from exploiting nature to cultivating and partnering with it. This was the earliest seed of agriculture, a turning point that would completely change human history. Painting hunt scenes on rock walls wasn't merely art. It was a method of storing information outside the human brain. These images became a collective memory, a primordial book. Through them, the experience of one generation could be passed, vividly, to the next.